table. I won't even expose myself to it. But for the knife, though, we have caught, like, I have one story, only a few people have attempted. And I basically got to the point of like pressing charges to get the guy. But instead I said, I found him on, Twitter, and I messaged him. I was like, listen,
how'd you know took your knife?
We know everything. And we have cameras, and we have, who the reservation is under. So we had cameras all over the restaurant. So when we put the knives down, we have a whole system of like knife in, knife out. And this guy had slipped in. I'm not going to mention his name because at the end of the day, he did the right thing. But he had slipped the knife into the baby. Dry aging, though, I mean, all dry aging is not created equal. I call it an environmental chamber. So think about it like making cheese in France. You say, hey, I order goat cheese. And you think you'd get one type of goat cheese across the line. I'm creating an environment just like a cheesemaker, okay, that's unique to my own. I actually have the culture from like 15, 16 years ago that I've traveled with.
Hold on. You put culture? So
yeah, I've like a method. I basically take meat that has been aged, and I bring those spores, if you will, from that aging meat, because there's a mold on it. It's a friendly mold, and
it's a friendly mold.
Yeah, I like it. I don't want to turn people off to it, because this has been.
I didn't know that you brought your own mold.
Yeah, so
I just figured you just let it dry age.
It's not as simple as that. For me, like, it's each environment. Again, so I get away from, like, someone can turn around and say, like, my dry age is incredibly clean at 100 days, 120 days. Because I get there slowly. My temperature is very low. I like to, dry age at 32 to 35 degrees. I like a high humidity, so I don't dehydrate the meat too soon. I like 85%, sometimes a little bit lower if I want to pull. It really depends,
So when you
lots of fans.
So when you say like, how are you bringing this culture in? How do you get it to interact with the meat?
I basically take pieces from the previous, dry age room, and I bring it to that. And so I put it up by the fan, and it will circulate spores.
You put it by the fan? Like, how do you do that?
Well, there's a fan in a cooler, and it's blowing around. It's like blowing so it'll blow the spores around the room. So my dry age has a unique flavor. You might try, some great guys who are like master purveyors in the Bronx, these guys are like my heroes. They taught me practically dry aging. They have their own flavors, so their dry age tastes different. Pat LaFrida is another New York guy, does amazing dry age beef as well. His has a different flavor. So, for me, that's why I take a lot of pride, even though it's not the most cost effective thing to carry, $100,000 in inventory, but it gives me a unique flavor profile that is my unique selling point for my restaurant.
So you have these pieces. So like those steaks that we saw in that photograph, you would take one of those dry aged steaks when it's ready, and then you would trim the pieces off. Then you'd use those pieces, those darkened pieces, which just has the spores on it. And that would, how do you know how much to put in there?
I put as much as I can. I don't want it too like clean in there. I want it to be an environment. So it's like a cave. I'll put a couple of trays in, and then I'm very tactile. So I'll touch the meat, and I'll feel it, and I'll taste it. I'll see where we're at. I'm always cutting into a steak. It's like a lot like.
When you say you taste it, like you cook it?
Yeah, like I'll cut off a piece. Like, how are we looking at 30 days? How are we looking at 50 days? So each room is different because, I had a dry room in Vegas, and we had ceilings that were 30, 35 feet. A lot of circulating air. It was just like had a different flavor profile. We were able to age 150 days, and that was like our sweet spot. Okay. And then here in Hollywood, it's a lot less. I have a lower ceiling. It circulates differently. It's just, you have to really kind of taste. It's not just like, hey, I have dry age, or you go to the supermarket. It's like, oh, you sell dry age? Okay, great. I'll take it. And if you think that's what it tastes like, it's a good indicator of what it is. But if you really want to get, like down to it, each dry age can taste a lot different.
That's really weird. So it's very experimental in a lot of ways.
It's constantly moving.
How long did it take you to dial it in?
Well, when I first did it, it was really by mistake, particularly the extended age, because we just weren't selling the meat. So I had a lot of pieces like left, back for a long time. And, I was like, I cut into it and I tasted it. I was like, whoa, I mean, this is incredible. And I was talking to the old school guys who dry age, like, oh, you're wasting your money. Nobody wants steak over 42 days. It's just dehydrating. Whatever. I was like, no, I think it is like when you cook it a long time, it just ages and just turns into something else. It's just
those people
nasty.
who want well done steak are offensive. You should go and eat Burger King, you monsters. What's wrong with you? When I go to dinner with someone, they order well done steak, I just cringe. I'm like, who am I eating?
Yeah, it's a cultural thing I noticed with some people. Like they just want to cook. But if they want a well done steak, then I recommend the wet aged steak to do well done because, at least, you have a fighting chance for some type of flavor that would be appealing.
It's weird. Like, why are you eating steak?
Yep.
You know?
It's true. It's true.
It's just
that's for me,
for everybody.
Yeah.
It's a criminal. It's a criminal act. You're wasting a piece of meat.
It's true. I kind of look the other way. I mean,
what do you want, ketchup with that?
Yeah, it's painful for me.
Yeah,
it's painful.
I mean, some people grew up eating well done steak, and that's how they like. That's one of the interesting things about your place. Like, you make the steak knives. So like when they serve you and they put the forks and the knife down, they tell you. Adam Perry Lang made this steak knife.
Yeah.
You're like, oh.
And I priced it at $950.01. Everybody like, why so much? I said, it's priced to be a deterrent. It's 1 cent over the felony threshold. And
what's the felony threshold?
It's like if you steal something and the value is over $950, it's a felony. So
really?
Yeah. So in the state of California. So from my perspective, like, I don't want to sit there, people are idiots sometimes. They'll go into the restaurant and they'll just take stuff and they don't realize what goes into it. And I was like, listen, I know I'm going to have a couple of bad apples in there, but the majority of people really are good people and they're not going to steal things. But a good majority will take pepper mills and things. I mean, it infuriates us as restaurateurs.
God, that's so gross. I never thought of that.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Like what they'll take, meaningful stuff because, you really want to do nice things for your customer.
Do you catch people taking pepper mills?
No, I don't put pepper mills on the table. I won't even expose myself to it. But for the knife, though, we have caught, I have one story, only a few people have attempted. And I basically got to the point of pressing charges to get the guy. But instead I said, I found him on, Twitter and I messaged him. I was like, listen,
how'd you know who took your knife?
We know everything. And we have cameras and we have, who the reservation is under. So we had cameras all over the restaurant. So when we put the knives down, we have a whole system of knife in, knife out. And this guy had slipped in. I'm not going to mention his name because at the end of the day, he did the right thing. But he had slipped the knife into the baby carriage, into his baby's carriage.
Oh,
and I'm like, you mother. I said,
God.
So I called him very calmly and I said, listen, I don't think you realize what went into those knives. I make them no response. And then I remind him, it's a felony and I'm going to give you until 6 o'clock today to return the knife. And then he realized we were serious. He returned the knife and then, now.
So he returned it personally?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
How awkward.
Yeah. I had another guy and he returned it and he just was pissed off. He handed it back and he walked out the door.
Why is he mad at you? Because he stole something.
Yeah,
God,
I can't figure it. It's
dealing with the general public. I mean, in a sense, this is a lot like comedy clubs. Most people are amazing.
Yes.
And then you get a few knuckleheads that want to yell out things and interrupt the show. And
you just try not to allow it to penetrate you, to start causing you to not make nice things so your customers enjoy.
Right.
So you try to block that out.
Yeah.
You just try to give a good experience to people the best that you can.
Yeah, that's the same thing with comedy. You want to make sure that you never have a negative feeling about the audience. But some people do develop that don't understand. It's almost like if you read every comment on Twitter. Most people are nice.
Yeah. Not say, hey, I'm going to cook that steak and I'm going to use a cast iron pan. It's like, well, I don't have a cast iron pan. So what are you going to do? It's like, well, I'm going to cook it on a grill. It's like, you don't have a grill. It's like, okay. What do I have? It's like, you have this, this, and this. That's, so I only have this shitty, steel pan here and doing like this. And, you take a look at it and you're like, you adapt, I guess that's.
Is a steel pan shitty?
No, it's great.
Okay.
I use that I'm just saying the steel pans are great. Blue steel, I use that all the time in the kitchen. I like cast iron just in terms of the heat recovery that it has.
What does that mean?
When you have a cast iron pan, so you heat, it's slow to heat up, but then once it gets to that level, if I was to put a cold steak in it, the cold steak on a different type of pan would bring the temperature of the steel down, and then it has to heat back up. And then by that time, water can start to develop underneath the steak, and then it starts boiling or steaming, and that's why you can't get a crust. When you put in a steak into a cast iron pan, for example, and you could do a planche or whatever, the rate at which water is repelled is it steams or it goes away from the meat. It's actually, and so as a result, it then starts the browning. Okay. and transforming the flavor rather than it boiling. Because if you tasted a boiled piece of meat versus a piece of meat with a crust, you'd say the piece of meat with the crust is a lot better, you know? So there's just something about it. So the cast iron pan is basically when you put the steak in, the temperature is, it's not even going to be moved because it's like a freight train. It's just moving, you know, it's going to keep going. But something like a thinner steel pan, if you put something big and cold into it, it's going to drop the temperature of the steel, and then it has to recover not only with the steel, but the mass of, let's say, a thick steak. So it's got to compensate. That's really why.
Now, I have a carbon steel pan that I sear steaks on all the time. Most of the time, the way I cook is I use a Traeger grill, and I cook it very slow. So I'll do it at 225 degrees, and I do it until I hit an internal temperature about 125, and then I sear the outside. That's been the method that I use.
Well, I'm going to just share my knowledge with you. So with cooking steaks, the term sear doesn't really, it's a misnomer. There's only browning, because like searing really only can happen when, you have live flesh, so to speak. So it doesn't actually happen like where it sears in or seals in juices.
What about like ahi tuna when they sear that?
Well,
is that technically
it's more like browning.
Okay.
It's just like
it's a terminology.
It's a terminology.
Okay.
It's like keep searing. I'm not telling you not to think like that.
No, I understand what you're saying.
The concept is it's browning. It's not searing. So, bring me back on track.
Low temperature.
Okay, so for example, what I would tweak with you is like I would say go to 265. You can have the same results in a quicker period of time with the same tenderness. That ratio of speed is not going to impact your product. So at the end of the day, 225, everybody says slow and low, but I'd say a lot of times like a bit hotter and a bit quicker is actually better for the crust development and also for the meat. Because for the tenderness of the meat, let's say you have a thick, like a brisket, and it's got all this collagen in it, which is tightly wound protein. I think about it as like a sponge that's dehydrated. When you throw it on top of the water, it kind of floats, and then all of a sudden it catches and then soaks up the juice. So when you're putting it in at that lower temperature, you're heating it up, you're causing the protein to squeeze out the liquid. And then if you're doing it at the right ratio, it's drinking